From courtside the virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC Podcast, a weekly show for basketball gamers and hardcore hoopheads. And with you once again, joined as always by my co-host Derek, aka D4 Derek, we've been hitting the blacktop with our basketball gaming over the weekend, not in NBA 2K, but in a new release we've been anticipating. That's what we're going to be talking about this week, so please, tip us off.
So yeah, on today's episode, we will be reviewing NBA The Run, which released on June 9th for PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and Steam. This game was developed by Play by Play Studios, a small yet passionate development team partially made up of people who worked for EA, and on the old and incredibly well-received NBA Street series. The standard edition price of the game is $29.99 US, with the deluxe edition costing $39.99. The deluxe edition comes with 3 rookie variants of current NBA stars that are already in the game, and 1,000 cred, which is in-game currency to use in the shop. The game features 32 NBA stars and 5 unique Streetball legends. The game's style is very similar to NBA Street. 3-on-3 full court, side view for the primary camera, and the game features some of the most famous Streetball courts in the world. This game is online only, with PvP being the primary target. So Andrew, I felt the best way to go about this would be to have me give my review first, which will include a score, followed by you giving your review. Lastly, we will end the show going over this week's community question, which is, did you pick up the game? And if so, what are your first impressions? If you did not pick up the game, why have you not picked it up? It's important to note that Andrew and I connected for a few hours on NBA The Run this weekend, where I controlled Jaylen Brown and he controlled Victor Wembanyama. And we connected with a random for every game. I would say that overall we had a pretty good time, Andrew. But man, some people just don't know how to play or pass.
Yes, I did have some flashbacks to the wreck, playing online in NBA The Run. Playing together, of course, won a few championships. Spoilers here, Derek. For our reviews, I'm sure we won a few championships together. We did have fun, as we had fun in the playtesting sessions. And yeah, I will say it was a pretty smooth experience as far as connectivity. No lag, no dropouts during our session. So I'd say that those sessions went pretty much as good as they possibly could go.
Yeah, and shout out to IHOP Shiesty, who connected with us as a random. And we won 3 tournaments with him. Awesome teammate, played great defense, passed the ball, was jumping for oops, understood the rules of each game. Yeah, great teammate. Every random was like IHOP Shiesty. So let's get to my review. It's important to note that this is not a first impressions review. It's a full review, as it should be. This game is not in early access. It was a full release and is priced as such. This review covers what we got at release with the product that we paid for, not promises of future content. This isn't a review based on this being a potential investment, but more what we actually have right now in the game. It's also important to note that I am not reviewing this game based on the size of the development team. This is a full-price product that was released to the public. It's something people paid for. When most people buy a game, they don't care about the size of the development team. They care about getting the quality they believe they deserved based on what they paid for. This is very important. The score of the game doesn't go up based on the size of the development team or promises of future content. There is no handicap here. Also, the developers even recently promoted NBA The Run as a NBA Street-inspired game. This is important as well, because it will be and should be compared to the NBA Street series it was inspired by. And it doesn't get a handicap just for entering the space. The game should be reviewed based on the value it provides for the price. So let's start with gameplay. The mark of a good basketball game is having both defense and offense be engaging, with mechanics that make sense and allow you to make the appropriate impact if executed properly. Overall, NBA The Run does well here. Playing defense is just as fun and rewarding as offense, whether it be swiping for steals, pushing someone to the ground, on or off ball, swatting or catching a shot out of the air, or challenging a dunker at the rim and swatting his stuff, or sending his body to the pavement where he lay lifeless. All of these elements, with the exception of the shoving, was in the NBA Street series, which played incredibly well in people's hands and was well received. Rebounding also works well and is rewarding, and is an underrated part of winning in this game. Defense, however, is often held back due to a stamina gauge that doesn't fill up fast enough, leaving people walking much of the time in order to conserve it. Offensively, the game is hit or miss. While on one hand, you have a lot of staples from the Street series, on the other hand, the execution is not as sound. You have some advanced dribble moves you can execute, both with the B button, think Xbox controller, and with holding down the trigger and flicking the right stick in different directions. You can also execute basic moves just using the right stick, like basic spins. From my understanding, the game has shot timing, but it's hard to tell how well implemented it is, as most players, with the exception of a few, rarely ever miss. I will say that I love the fact that this game has no meters, meaning no shot meter, no dunk meter, just pure arcade hoops. That is the way it should be. More on the offensive side, I have seen one floater animation, but I have not seen any layup animations, and players only dribble with their dominant hand unless you do a dribble move. After the dribble move has been executed, the ball goes right back into the dominant hand. This looks and feels awkward, and I expected more out of a game that released in 2026, as players switch hands on the dribble in games 20, even 30 years old. Stamina, again, is an issue on this end, as oftentimes you find yourself running out after one or two moves. This can happen because maybe you sprinted up the court, or you made a stop on the defensive end and headed the other way. Because of the stamina limitations, you can play entire games against people where you don't see dribble moves executed. This can make the game feel less like a streetball game and more like a slow-motion slog, as the players are not fast as it is. So combine that with players not doing any streetball moves and conserving stamina, and not even doing basic moves, well, you can see what I'm getting at. When playing with Andrew, who was using Wemby, he wasn't even crossing half court sometimes, and that's because he was trying to conserve stamina. There's the other issue of breaking your own ankles, which happens too often, and oftentimes when you have a full bar of stamina. Breaking your own ankles was in the old Street games, like Street Volume 2, but it didn't happen as often, and I don't remember it hardly ever happening with good ball handlers. Whether I'm using Anthony Edwards, Jaylen Brown, John Morant, etc., I would find that I was scared to execute an advanced dribble move. This in a streetball game, because I had fear of breaking my own ankles and making a turnover. I found myself more often than not resorting to the basic spins as a result. I felt like executing advanced moves was often a gamble, which I think is the opposite of what you want in a streetball game. If you try to do any advanced moves with a guy like Wemby, well, more often than not, he will break his own ankles and fall down. From a dunking standpoint, you are only provided with one dunk for each player when you buy the game. Any advanced dunks need to be purchased from the in-game shop with the in-game currency called cred. When you buy advanced dunks, you can assign them to 4 different slots and change in and change out when you want. This game only having one dunk animation that plays out for each player at launch is incredibly disappointing. Even if the players just had multiple basic dunks that would take place when hitting the shoot button while attacking the rim, that would be better and more understandable. But only one dunk per player in a game priced at $30? That doesn't seem right. If you buy the $40 version of the game, you get 1,000 cred, which will buy you exactly one advanced dunk. It's also important to note that these advanced dunks can be assigned to any player and are not player-specific, though there are some really cool ones in the shop, including a free throw line dunk where the animation looks very similar to Jordan's famous dunk from the foul line. Offense has other necessary and pretty well-executed NBA Street staples, like self alley-oops, double alley-oops, and even triple alley-oops. You can also jump for oops just like in NBA Street, but it actually works a little better in NBA The Run at times because you can still jump for them when you are out of stamina, where in Street you could not. The game also features an in-the-zone mechanic, which replaces the game breaker from the old Street games. Overall, I find this works well, and isn't too overpowering. I also like how it's tailored to different aspects of hoops. You can get in the zone and have attributes increased on defense or offense. I would say offense can be enjoyable in this game as long as you are playing with the right people, but can also feel less like a street game at times, due to constantly having to watch your stamina. As far as player movement goes, it's a bit janky. Players often look stiff and snap into different animations awkwardly. However, I find the player movement serviceable. Because of the different NBA stars in the game has different archetypes, which can help when trying to build a well-balanced squad. For example, you could have Wemby for rim protecting, rebounding, and shooting, Giannis as an all-around guy, and Steph Curry as your ball handler and shooter. The game has ratings for each player, which involves categories related to handles, defense, shooting, and more. As it relates to what you get for content and modes at launch, this game underwhelms in a big way. Due to this fact, it's hard for me to recommend this game for the price they are charging for it. The game has no offline play. This means no offline solo campaign and no offline co-op or head-to-head. This means you can't sit on the couch and play with your siblings, parents, or friends, no all-nighters with snacks and laughs, no memories created at home. And because of broken AI, this game is really just a game of PvP knockout. The game has you choose one of the NBA stars or a unique Streetball legend, as there is no create a baller option. You get thrown into a knockout tournament with 2 random teammates or with friends you invite online. If your friends are not online, well, good luck. From all the games I have played, I would say I was paired with a random who actually passed the ball and knew how to play about 25% of the time. This means that your experience with this game could potentially be poor the majority of the time, regardless if you like the game's mechanics or not. Your fun can often heavily rely on your friends also purchasing and owning this game and being online. Unfortunately, this is even a bigger turnoff because there are no other viable ways to play this game. You don't have an offline single-player mode, no campaign, no way to connect with people locally, and knockout solos might as well not exist. Knockout solos is a single-player option where you are paired with AI and can play against someone else paired with AI or straight up against the AI. But the problem is the AI in this game is absolutely miserable. It's not even worth taking to court with AI teammates or opponents. They don't play defense well. They don't play offense well. There is no challenge and there is no reward. The only reason to ever touch knockout solos is if you want to mindlessly grind cred so you can buy things in the shop. The game also has a knockout friends option. But again, this requires everybody to be online or you can be involved with the terrible AI. Basically, what you get for $29.99 or $39.99 is the same gameplay loop over and over again. It's the same tournament over and over. Where the game does get some credit, and this is a feature much like what NBA Jam on Fire Edition had in its road trip mode. There are different structures to games, and it's completely random. One game will be 1s and 2s to 11, the next could be 2s and 3s to 21, followed by oops are worth 3 and all other shots are worth 1, etc., etc. This is a nice touch and keeps things interesting at times. However, how often will you want to pick this game up after you have competed in your 50th tournament? The game is incredibly repetitive because it lacks depth. It's also important to note that this is an online-only game that has no live chat, no text chat, and very limited matchmaking. That's right, an online-only sports game with no voice chat and no chat box. This means there is no way for you to communicate, if necessary, with your teammates. The game is hit or miss from a presentation perspective as well. On one hand, Bobito Garcia, the legendary voice from NBA Street Volume 2, is back, and he brings it. I love his energy, I love his catchphrases, I love everything about him in this game. On the other hand, the in-game music is pretty blah. I like that it switches up from time to time when you jump into different games, but much of it sounds like elevator music or hold music. It doesn't really speak to Streetball. I like the fact that the game has shirts and skins, but I feel there should be an option for home and away as well. Which brings me to another point. Because of the limited player roster and the way matchmaking works, you're often taking the floor with your clone, or are playing 3 of the same player. For example, I chose Zion, but was paired with Zion when I took the court. This can cause confusion. I've also played against 3 LeBrons and 3 Wembys. I understand that the player roster is not big, but I wish there was a way to make it so matchmaking would recognize the player you choose. That way, it can pair you with teammates that are not using the same player. This game deserves credit as it relates to having legendary streetball courts from around the world represented. Not only represented, but done well. The detail is there, and it's clear that the developers were hard at work making this part of the game a priority. However, again, mode depth holds this piece back, as you are just randomly assigned to courts via the tournament structure. You cannot choose to play on any of the courts. This includes when you're playing in knockout solos or knockout friends. The game also features an in-game shop, which worries me a bit, as the developers did not rule out microtransactions in the future. They get credit for now, as no microtransactions are in the game at this time. But, back to the shop. Virtual currency in this game is called cred. You build this through playing games. It's nice in theory, but I noticed that a lot of the items in the shop cost quite a bit of cred. An example of this is unlocking a player. With the $39.99 edition of the game, you get 1,000 cred, along with 3 rookie variants. However, if you want to unlock rookie LeBron, who's not included as one of the 3 rookie variants, it's 5,000 cred. Playing through tournaments, it took a few hours to get to that 5K cred, but I wanted to have more than one dunk, so I purchased dunks instead of LeBron. My point is, I'm worried that content that is added in the future to this game, like new players, classic and otherwise, are going to cost a lot of cred. If so, that will create quite the grind for players. Looking at the shop and the game's overall structure, I worry that they will offer a shortcut to avoid the grind where you can buy cred, much like VC for NBA 2K. I hope they do not go down this road, but with the game being so limited at release and no promise that future microtransactions wouldn't be a thing, I am a little bit worried about that. In the shop, you can find some pretty cool things, though, like different home and away jerseys, which includes alternate and city editions, badges and banners, taunts, and you can unlock moves. My final review score for NBA The Run is a 5 out of 10. While the gameplay can be fun and engaging, the game is held back by having no real depth. You find yourself in a gameplay loop that can get repetitive and oftentimes frustrating, especially if you are forced to play with random people. If you don't have friends that own the game, or no friends are online, this is what you are stuck with. And because this game is online PvP, your opponents can also be frustrating to play against, and this fact is not touched on enough. Playing against people who play erratically and often poorly can get old pretty fast. How many times can you see someone throw up a full court shot, a form of rage quitting, before you say, yeah, I've had enough of this? The game doesn't have strong matchmaking either, and has no voice or text chat. Because the AI is so poor, AI-involved modes like Knockout Solos or Knockout Friends feel incomplete and not really worth touching. The gameplay can get repetitive also due to the lack of signature style and limitations that didn't exist in games that came out 20 to 30 years ago. For example, players never switching hands on dribbles and only one basic dunk per player when using the shoot button. By paying $29.99 or $39.99, you are buying a game that feels unfinished and rushed to release. When you are reviewing a game, you should think about who it appeals to and why. Due to the limitations I mentioned, I don't believe that this game appeals to the majority of basketball gamers. I recommend this game at these prices to people who have some extra money on their hands and don't mind paying for what feels like an unfinished product. It could also be good for content creators and others who don't mind the continuous and often repetitive gameplay loop. If you are somebody who has been paying attention to what the developers, Michael Young and Scott Probst, have been saying, you may look at buying this game off of future potential, as they have talked about possibly adding legends in the future, more items to the shop, and stated they are looking into potentially adding offline features. But again, due to the lack of depth both mode and feature-wise at this time, I cannot give this a higher score than a 5 out of 10. I recommend that most people wait for a sale or wait to see if some of the future potential additions that have been discussed get added to the game. I will say that I have had fun connecting with you and others in the NLSC community, Andrew. But I would be lying if I said I wasn't disappointed with what was included in the release of this game. As far as depth, it feels basically the same as the playtest, yet with less dunk options unless you buy them with cred from the shop. I was expecting the release to have more depth. I did not expect it to be this bare bones. Also, like we discussed on past episodes of the NLSC podcast, if you're going to enter the basketball gaming space and promote your game as being a spiritual successor of a game that came out more than 20 years ago, you better be at least as good with the same depth as that game that came out over 20 years ago. NBA The Run falls short here as well. One thing I do want to mention before throwing it over to you, Andrew. Shame on all the content creators and reviewers who are not being honest about this game. I have read many reviews, many which barely touch on or completely omit the truth about the lack of depth in this game. And I have seen content creators shoot down valid critiques and criticism. I don't care if you are accepted into a games creator network. I don't care who pays your bills or helps you get views. You should remain honest about the games you play or promote. Otherwise, you are deceiving potential consumers with your influence.
Yeah, it's been unfortunate to see some of the responses from content creators that don't feel on the level. The way that a lot of gamers seem to be really defending this game in a very aggressive way, shutting down criticism, sometimes with really nasty comments directed towards reviews. We've seen some comments on Steam reviews where people have just gone really over the top, responding to very fair criticism of the game. It's been very strange to see, very unfortunate to see, because community for this game is everything. This is PvP, obviously. It all comes down to the online user base. Having a friendly, sporting community is vital to the health of this game. And promoting that kind of toxicity that we've seen, and to your point, content creators being misleading in their coverage of this game, yeah, I've really not enjoyed seeing that.
Yeah, I mean, the most popular review on Steam, and kind of with the Steam reviews, it happened kind of how I expected and how I predicted. It was mixed for the first couple days. Now it's ticked up to mostly positive. But the most popular review on this game on Steam, where 539 people found it helpful, not recommended. Was really hoping for an NBA Street, but this isn't it. This game has no real music. It's all just generic background tracks. It has 0 offline single player, no building a character, not even a way to practice. On top of being online only, there is also no way to communicate with your teammates, so everyone involved might as well be bots. Cool alley-oop mode means they count for 3. I just can't tell my teammate I'm going to go for one or for him to go for one. I get that it ain't free, but $30 for a game with barely any content, when where the progression is just skins, is just way too high. And people appreciate that type of feedback because it tells them things that they were unaware of, right? About the game. I think a lot of people are looking at this game and the way it's being promoted as a NBA Street successor that's going to have the depth of a game like NBA Street. And it has far from that. I think there's gameplay bones there. I think the game can be fun when you're playing with the right people, but this game is certainly not for everybody. And like I stated, it's so heavily dependent on online play that if you don't have friends to play with, to connect with, that also own the game, and you're forced to play with random people, you could be having a frustrating time the majority of the time. And you know that as well from connecting with me when we were connecting with a random, right? Each time it's truly hit or miss. For me, like I stated, it's like 25% of the time I would say that I get a random that passes the ball and is okay to play with.
Yeah.
And again, even if you are playing with your friends, right? You connect with 2 buddies and you jump into these tournaments, your opponents could be frustrating to play against, right? Because they're playing erratically. They're playing stupid. They're throwing up full court shots and everything. You're so dependent on that online crowd. You're so dependent on playing with random people that this game can get frustrating. So, yeah, I appreciate the people that are speaking honestly about the game, which I think we are. Right? We're talking about the pros and cons. You didn't hear only negatives in my review. I talked about the positives related to gameplay, about some of the cool things that are in the shop, etc. But yeah, this game doesn't really have any depth.
Absolutely. And before I get into my review, looking at a lot of those positive reviews on Steam, there are far too many that are retaliatory towards the critical reviews, you know, saying those people can't play, they must have a bad connection, as you said, they must be bad on the sticks, the whole get good crowd. You know how much I love that, Derek. There's a lot of that, a lot of ad hominems attacking the people who are sharing negative reviews, not really countering any of their points, mind you, just saying they're hating on the game, they suck, the game is awesome, don't you dare question it. Those reviews definitely have very little value. And a few people have already worked out the meta for this game. A few exploits. You've seen some clips pop up on social media, Derek, on X. People doing that twitchy step back and twitching around up the court. To your point, as you just brought up, you know, even if your teammates aren't doing it, you're facing opponents who are. And it's a very awkward way to play the game. It certainly doesn't look good, but because they're trying to cheese the game, they're trying to find that meta, exploit these moves, use these exploits as they're found. Yeah, it's not satisfying.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if they're true exploits either. It's just the fact that you're playing against somebody who's doing this annoying thing and you're forced to play against them, right? I also wanted to point out too that, and I talked about this on past shows, I think most people didn't understand that this was an online only game, and the way it was promoted on social media, when it was the way it was being marketed, et cetera, especially on Twitter where I saw it the most, this fact was not mentioned really. If it was mentioned, it was kind of in passing or as a response. So like one of the most helpful reviews on Steam, 140 people found this review helpful. States not recommended. I did not realize that there is absolutely zero single-player elements for this game. As someone who doesn't want to constantly play online with randoms, I definitely felt blindsided. Admittedly, it's my fault for not doing some research, but I'm already in the process of getting a refund. If you like playing against other people online exclusively, then I'm sure it's fine. Another one where 127 people found this review helpful. You can't play versus the computer in any way. No tutorial to learn the buttons, so good luck out there. There is a shoot-around mode in the game, but it's very bare bones, right? And the AI is broken in the game. The person continues, this is not NBA Street, might be worth the price of entry if they made a campaign mode, so you can at least learn the game before you match up with somebody who is in the beta. And he states big refund energy. So I think that a lot of people are getting blindsided by this game when they pick it up, realizing that there's like no depth to it and that there's no offline options.
Yeah, we mentioned that during the previous season, such as it was, during the playtesting betas, that it really is kind of flying under the radar. The lack of depth to this game, the fact that it is PvP, it's not hidden, per se. It's there in the Steam listing, they've been mentioning it in previews, in interviews, etc., but it still flew under the radar. People were still not informed enough about that, which is why we were stressing that on the podcast, Derek, and also in our social media posts, that this is PvP, that it does lack that offline campaign mode, that it isn't really a single-player game. Even though it can be played alone, it's not a satisfying experience to do so. You know, the full version backs up what we noticed in the playtest. And once again, you have people pushing back and saying, oh, well, do the research, etc. And certainly that is important when you're purchasing a video game or any product for that matter. But, yeah, it flew under the radar. That speaks to how the game was promoted.
Yeah, I want to read one of these other reviews too, because I think this is important. And again, 16 people found this helpful. Open the game and immediately notice that there's literally one tournament-style mode you can play where you either make a team of 3 yourself or play with other people, and that's it. No offline, no create a player, no nothing. The game is fine, I guess, but it's not worth $30. I didn't need to play an hour to tell you that. If you add the depth in the future, that's fine, but we need to stop normalizing games taking your money before they are worth the money. And that's part of the point of my review. Is this game worth $29.99 or $39.99 with what's included at launch, with what we have in the game right now? I think for the majority of basketball gamers, for the majority of people, it's not.
Before we go on, a reminder that the NLSC podcast comes out every week on the NLSC, nba-live.com, as well as our YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast apps. If you're listening on any of those apps, we'd greatly appreciate a review. To keep up with the show and everything we're doing with basketball gaming in general, connect with us on social media. On Twitter and Facebook, we are the NLSC. We also have an Instagram, NLSC Basketball, and on YouTube, we're youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. Once again, visit us at nba-live.com, where in addition to the podcast, you'll also find all of our original content, as well as our forum and modding community.
So, Andrew, let's get to your review of NBA The Run.
So, Derek, you did a great job of breaking down this game, so I'll try not to be too repetitive myself. When I picked up the game, you were offline, so I had to jump on by myself with randoms. I decided to play with Giannis after playing with Wemby during the playtesting. I thought that would be a suitable choice because of his blocking and dunking. As you know, Derek, that is my preferred style when playing arcade basketball video games. The first couple of games, very much like the Rec in 2K, hit or miss. It didn't have great teammates, so it went about as well as you'd expect. That was frustrating, of course, but the games are over quick enough. That is one of the benefits of this game. There are quick matches, quick showdowns, so you can move on, find new teammates fairly quickly. Still not a great experience, of course, and I can see that really turning people off the game. Jumping in, having that first experience with randoms that aren't good at the game, that aren't good teammates, that are selfish, etc., yeah, I can see people getting turned off. I persisted because I know that it can be more enjoyable with the right teammates. Subsequent games, I did get matched up with teammates with better IQ, less selfish, and I started having a good time. Blocks, fancy outlet passes, dunks, buckets. It was satisfying. When this happens, you can see the game's potential, Derek, what it could be with more polish. I managed to get a championship playing with randoms. That was satisfying for my first session to be able to do that. I wanted to keep playing until I had a successful run. It was fun enough to keep trying. So that is a positive for the game. that it was enjoyable enough to encourage me to keep trying, to try and find those better teammates, to have that good run, to get a championship with my first time with the full version. That being said, when you do get bad teammates, it's definitely not a good time. As far as playing solo, in knockout solos, AI is atrocious. It's no surprise that there's no offline campaign. They were not making this to be an offline game. There's also a weird delay when switching control to other players in knockout solos. Again, unmistakably, this was not designed to be a single-player game. And that's unfortunate, because it does lose its appeal without that depth, without that extra content. People do feel misled, as you can tell by the reviews. There's also some weird glitches in the game at launch, like someone being able to run for the ball in the opening scrum before the countdown ends, weird issues where you end up blocking your teammates, and that doesn't leave a good first impression when you have that lack of polish, on top of the lack of depth. It has some good elements, but again, just feels unpolished. I will say that so far I haven't had any issues with lag, no disconnection errors. There was a bit of roughness at launch. It's been working great for me, even here in Australia, even with my terrible connection, Derek, so that is certainly promising. That's not to say that it won't be an issue, but it has been working well for me so far, so thumbs up for that. As we observed during the playtesting betas, sprint replenishes far too slowly, and a lot of the issues in the game come back to this, not being able to get back on D, or have enough turbo to play a good defensive possession after a bucket. Turbo does not replenish after you score. Players ending up being a bit too slow in general. Like you said, Derek, walking around too much because even just trying to sprint up and down the court a couple of times, you're out of turbo. Not being able to pull off moves, though as you found out, Derek, in our sessions, and in other sessions as well, even with a full sprint bar, that can still be an issue. Still breaking your own ankles, somehow not having enough energy to pull off even one move. This encourages cherry-picking and selfish play. We had a teammate basically just cherry-picking the whole game, Derek, playing with Giannis, just staying up that end, basically leaving us to play 2-on-3 on defense. And unfortunately, that is kind of an effective strategy, because you've got somebody always in the front court to throw the long pass to who isn't depleting their sprint meter by running up and down the court. Shouldn't be that way. A lack of balance. And as we've said so many times, Derek, that is the key to a great basketball video game, having that balance between offense and defense. In all the games that I've played with you, with randoms, it seems like the safest strategy is to play very basic basketball. People not pulling off moves, not even trying to pull off moves, because it feels too risky. Breaking your own ankle, running out of sprint, not being effective enough. People are just playing this very basic style of basketball, so there's that lack of streetball flair, which defeats the whole purpose of a game like this. With the original NBA Street games, you're able to pull off all these combos. Yes, if you just spam the dribble controls, you'd be out of sprint, you'd be out of turbo too quickly, but you're able to string together some moves, make these great highlights, break defenders' ankles. Unless you were using a very poor ball handler or just spamming the dribbling controls indiscriminately, you wouldn't be breaking your ankles as often as you do in NBA The Run. You don't have that streetball flair. You don't have that satisfaction of pulling off those moves. Threes are too tough to guard. You can get some fun snatch blocks with accurate timing, but there's a very precise window to do that, Derek. You can goaltend threes as an NBA Street, but it's too tough. This means that threes are very overpowered, not just because of their percentages, but also the tiny window where you can actually do something about them. Another issue with blocks is that players don't track the ball with their jump. Compare this to NBA Street, where players can leap towards the ball for the block or rebound instead of just going straight up. It's part of the overall stiffness of the gameplay. Jumping for alley-oops is similarly restrictive. You've got to be really close compared to older games. It does work, and it is really fun to leap into the air, get hit by a pass and throw it down, but again, a very precise window where you can actually do that. So many times I'll be running towards the hoop and hitting the shoot button to leap for the alley-oop, and I'm just a fraction outside of that zone, and I couldn't go up for the alley-oop. Speaking of zones, In the Zone still feels very ambiguous compared to power-ups like On Fire or Game Breakers. It's not as exciting. I'm still not sure what it does. I was playing with Wemby in our sessions, as you said, activated Paint Protector, but I didn't feel any kind of boost to my ability to block shots or have a physical presence in the paint. It wasn't really apparent what it does, apart from changing up the music, apart from having a nice visual effect, which is cool and all, but you want it to do something, like Fire in NBA Jam, like Game Breakers in NBA Street. Again, not as exciting, because of the ambiguity and not seeming to have enough of an effect. I do like the randomized rule sets, 1s and 2s, alley-oops counting for 3, etc. Great way of keeping the game fresh, game to game. Keeps you on your toes. Also facilitates some quick wins if you lean into that style and play to your strengths. It's a good idea. It does feel like we keep getting the same court over and over again, though, and it's not long before you've seen them all. The night and day variations and some freshness there. I love the courts and the game's aesthetic in general, but it is definitely repetitive, and repetitiveness is a recurring weakness with the game, Derek. As you and others have said, the music is very generic. I get what they're going for in terms of genre, that jazzy style, but unfortunately it's kind of a cheap imitation. Only having one dunk unlocked at the beginning is absolutely ridiculous, and this is where the beta testing, the play testing sessions, Derek, they feel misleading, because we had those dunks already equipped, we were able to pull them off. I thought, we're going to have that basic array of dunks, and we're going to be able to unlock even more. No, only one dunk at launch, and then you have to unlock the rest. Like you said, expensive. Even if you buy the deluxe edition, that extra cred, that 1,000 cred, will only get you one dunk. The cred accumulates very slowly, items are expensive comparatively, including basic cosmetics. They're also locked behind levels. And this approach, Derek, has me worried about the eventual addition of microtransactions, buying currency, buying level skips to get to content quicker, roster unlocks, etc. Overall, the game really isn't worth the price with those elements, with the gameplay, with the overall lack of depth. So, how would I score this game, Derek? I'm kind of stuck between 4 and 5, because it's capable of being fun on the sticks. It's being too enjoyable at its best to go too much lower than that. However, I also can't go much higher than that, because there's not enough meat to the game. There are issues with the gameplay, possibly not unresolvable with some post-release tuning, and we'll see about that. If you love PvP, I can see it having some lasting appeal, as long as the user base is there, and that of course is a crucial point. I can see people losing interest in this game very quickly. I can also see the community driving people away from the game, shutting down thoughtful and constructive feedback, the number of people who are poor teammates or poor opponents, the general toxicity, the critical Steam reviews having comments wishing harm upon the person who wrote them. Like I said, Derek, an online-only game needs to have a much friendlier community to survive. And people can say, that's soft, letting other people ruin your experience. But again, this is an online-only game, a community-driven game. The quality of the scene matters. In any case, to succeed long-term, it's going to need more content, and it has to add that content fairly quickly. It's going to have to maintain goodwill and avoid microtransactions. I think it's going to be very damaging if they do introduce microtransactions. It feels like a long shot because of the poor AI, and the developers really don't sound that enthusiastic about doing it, but offline modes are absolutely needed. And people can say, it's not about that. It's PvP only. And we get that. But that was a short-sighted and, dare I say, poor decision as far as the game's widespread and lasting appeal. So with all that being said, can I recommend it? Not wholeheartedly, but at the same time, I wouldn't necessarily recommend against it. I realise that sounds like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth there, Derek. But let me explain. It's overpriced for what it includes. However, if it piques your interest, if you're willing to give it a shot, if you had fun during the playtesting betas, if you can spare the money to take a risk on a game that may get better from here, it can be enjoyable. I've had fun with it. I can also tolerate a bit of jank if there are enough fun moments. And not everyone can, I realise that. And of course, not everyone should. And to that end, I can't make this a strong recommendation. If you're hoping for an experience on par with the original NBA Street games, I would say, don't buy this. If you have the means and feel like taking a risk on something new, there's potential there, you might enjoy it. But be prepared to set the bar low, enjoy some roughness if you're playing with randoms, and I think there's definitely going to be a bit of a wait for more content. So, if you have any concerns about this game, and certainly if you don't see yourself getting into PvP, I can't recommend it.
If this game had offline multiplayer, so offline head-to-head, offline co-op, an offline single-player mode, even if it was basic, just, taking on like 9 or 10 challenges against the other available NBA stars that are in the game, all of that stuff. If it had all of that, I would probably score this at a 6 or 7, and I would say for $29.99, that's worth it.
Agreed.
Right? I think we could rank it maybe a 7, which is what IGN gave it anyway. But we would probably give it a 7 out of 10, and we would say, yes, this is more than likely going to be worth it for you. But the depth isn't there. It's too dependent on online play. And I want to point out, too, that one prediction that we had on a prior show was that the player base was going to drop significantly due to the repetitive nature of the game and possibly the fact that people are realizing that it doesn't have the depth, that it doesn't have the offline play. And I believe you looked up some numbers related to this, and the Steam player base has dropped significantly over the last few days, including the weekend, and it's pretty low.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the numbers on SteamDB, and these are approximate, obviously, but it currently reports 1,315 in-game. Over the past 24 hours, the peak has been 1,490. The all-time peak 5 days ago, from when we're recording this, when it was released, 2,821. Over the weekend when we were playing, Derek, it was kind of around 600 to 800. So yeah, it peaked at launch and hasn't returned there since.
Yeah, and I think there was a few times we checked it, like you said, it was like 600. There was one time I checked it was 500. I think there was an 800, etc. So I'm very curious, what the player count is on the consoles. Obviously, I can't see that, and how the player base will look overall, like a month from now, 2 months from now. What if there isn't any new content at that time? I think that, at the end of the day, this feels rushed. I know they worked on the game for a long time. I know that they're passionate about the game. I commend them on the job that they did do with making the gameplay, super fun at times and whatnot. But I feel like they felt they had to get this out there, and it's too early, right? I feel like the price point is too high for what they're providing. I didn't realize it was going to be the same as what we experienced in the beta. I feel like this was probably another year out, at least, before it was ready for release. And that's just my opinion, as a consumer, as somebody who sees what's in the game, who is part of the play tests, etc. Promises are one thing, talking up things that they want to add into the game. But until we see that, those are only just promises, right? And this wasn't released into early access at a lower price. This is a full price game. It's a full release. So, yeah, we will see what happens with the future of this game.
And I just had a quick look at the Xbox Marketplace and PlayStation Store. There's not enough ratings yet on the Xbox Marketplace to display a score. There's been 1,300 ratings on the PlayStation Store. Currently has a rating of 3.99 stars.
So let's get to the community's responses to this week's community question. I stated NBA The Run released on June 9th. Did you purchase the game? If so, what are your first impressions? And if you did not purchase, can you summarize why? Luxor at Luxor Waffle states, I bought the game and enjoyed it, but the absence of offline features and local multiplayer makes it difficult to recommend. There are some issues, but offline is much more important. If Play-by-Play Studios shut the servers down in the future and abandon the game, how else am I going to play it? And yeah, we talked about that on a prior show, Andrew. If this game is online only, what happens if the servers get shut down eventually? What you paid for? You don't have access to it anymore. If they end up inviting microtransactions into the equation in the future and you use, your real money in order to buy cred and then you put that towards players or things in the shop, if the servers go offline and you lose that game, that means you lost all that money and you have nothing to show for it. So yeah, there's bigger issues with this.
And the fact that people aren't concerned about that, obviously a lot of people are very defensive about this game already, but it does speak to how disposable games have become these days, that people are okay with the idea of, I bought this game, even pay an extra $10 for the deluxe edition, and at some point this game won't be playable. How long is that going to be? With NBA 2K, we know that we have 27 months of online support for every title. That is in the agreement. That is what 2K offers across all of their games. Sometimes they extend it for a couple of months. They did with NBA 2K18 from memory, but 27 months is all we're guaranteed. We don't have any kind of time frame here. No guarantees.
Josh at Sport Gaming 24 states, I didn't end up getting it at launch. I watched a lot of reviews and decided against it. It really needs a single player / offline couch co-op for me. Maybe I'm old. These new games just don't cater to me anymore, though. NBA Street, NBA Ballers, and even And One games are still it for me. And honestly, Josh, I think that the majority of gamers want to play offline. And I think that the online statistics related to, NBA The Run, how many people are online, just prove that, because far more people would have picked up the game if there was that offline option in my opinion. I think that online option should be there, and I think that it's super helpful when it is there for people that do want to jump online. But I still believe that the majority of people don't want to be matched up with random people online, don't want to be stuck playing online, don't want to potentially be part of a stressful, toxic atmosphere, etc. I still think offline is king, to be honest with you, to the average gamer.
You need to cater to both. There's a reason that 2K does that. Josh also goes on to say, also for $40 or £30, I could go out and find a PS2 and some of these old Streetball games. I think NBA The Run could have been held back and released with better modes and gameplay tweaks too. And that's also a great point, Derek, that you can go out and buy these old classics. They've still got the depth. They're still playable all these years later. And to your point, maybe it did need another year in development.
Yeah, and NBA Street, for example, NBA Street Volume 2 has more overall depth than NBA The Run, and it plays better on the sticks, right? And that game came out over 20 years ago. Steven at the Live King states, I like the game. There's a lot of room to grow. I said this before launch that it's possible this game could evolve into something great. They have announced that they will comb through feedback and let us know in a few weeks. That will say a lot. And I asked him a follow-up question. I said, do you think with the content that is in the game at release that it is worth $29.99? I stated, I'm not talking about anything planned for the future. I'm saying with what is in the game and how it functions at release. He states, game needs more modes for sure, but they stated it was a pick up and play game. There's games that cost more that has the same amount of features. LOL. Also, no microtransactions right now, and we can just ball for like an hour. They need to figure out a single player mode. So he's looking for that offline content as well. I do want to point out that two wrongs don't make a right. If there is a game out there that costs more, that has the same amount or less depth than NBA The Run, that doesn't make it right either. Right? Let's make that clear. However, I will state that he's stating the positive and negatives, and it looks like he is one of the people that I mentioned when I closed my review that bought this game more for the investment piece, right? He's investing in the future of this game, and that is fine. I just think that that's not what most gamers will do.
Yeah, and I guess we've done that to some extent. I mean, certainly for us, it's an investment for content as well. You know, we wanted to talk about the game, review it, obviously play it as well, create some content based on it. But for the average gamer, you know, it shouldn't be an investment. Like I said in my review, if you feel like taking a chance, if you do have the means to pick it up, you know, maybe you played the beta, you like the gameplay, you like what you see of it, you're willing to spend that money, invest in it possibly becoming this deeper game, you know, that's something to consider. But for the average gamer, you know, I don't feel comfortable recommending people invest like that.
Egyptian at Egyptian states, I haven't gotten it yet, but that's because I've been too into Forza Horizon 6. There's a lot to do, and I'm having fun. But I'm glad they brought that NBA Street vibe back with this game, and I hope it lasts forever, either through constant updates or franchising, because I will be on the court soon as I step out the car. And yeah, there, you know, the idea of a new Streetball game that's fun, hitting the space, has been a hot topic for years. And so a lot of people had a lot of excitement for this game, and still have excitement for the future of this game. One Swift at One Swift states, steals can be tweaked. Stamina and making more impact on dribble moves are my only little complaints. Other than that, I'm loving the game like old NBA Street. And that's awesome. We've also had fun with it as well, especially when I connect with Andrew and other people from the NLSC community. Yemo Slice at Yemo Slice states, fun-ass game and been streaming it every day. Just Plain Old Twins at Patrick and Kevin states, plays smooth, cheap price, scratches the NBA Street itch for the most part. Rounds are quick and effortless whether you win or lose. Win equals 20 minutes. He must be talking about winning the whole tournament. Fantastic style and atmosphere. Bought the $40 version. Main concern is that there isn't a whole lot of content right now. And so he's speaking to the depth, but he's happy with his purchase. Zaw at Zaw36077 states, needs better CPU AI during solos and friends lobbies. It's so brain dead. Yeah, he's speaking to the poor AI. Hemi Chunkler at Alex_BRX97 states, great gameplay, but no sense of progression. Needs an offline mode as well. Broncos Visuals at Broncos Visual ZZ states, awesome game, just needs more updates. Monsta at Monsta2423 states, I'm enjoying the game. So some positive comments here, and we love to see that. Andrew at Andrew5087 states, gameplay is all right, but no offline or local co-op is pathetic. Getting a refund. Andrew sounds a little bit like you, but he's getting a refund.
Yeah, and obviously people are enjoying the game, which is great to see, and not altogether surprising, because it can be fun on the sticks, fun on the virtual blacktop. It's just a case of, well, what do we do once we get a bit sick of running through these tournaments? And yes, I know that that is the whole game, but even if you are strictly about online PvP, there's still not a lot of depth there either. You know, it's hard to draw comparisons to NBA 2K or NBA Live because they are AAA releases, but you had those online events, you had that content drop, you had, or still have, new content coming into the game, challenges, collectibles, etc., always coming into the game with those online modes. You know, it's going to be interesting to see how people feel after a month of this, Derek.
Sticks at Stick So Sick states, I paid $40 for the deluxe edition. We haven't had an NBA-style streetball game in how long? It's not about having all kinds of modes right now for me. I'm just enjoying something different in sports games. I've also been playing Rematch. Highly recommend that. Danny 10 states, for a game to feel like real streetball, it needs fluidity, needs to be dynamic, and needs to have space for improvisation. And this is translating his post from Spanish to English, so it's a little bit all over the place. States, streetball is change of pace, footwork, and physical play. Current developers confuse street basketball with just putting down an asphalt court. He states hip-hop music in the background and graffiti on the walls. He's speaking to, what a streetball game should have and represent. He continues, but the moment you touch the controller, the game feels heavy. The players skate across the court, and the dribble animations are canned. He states that's not street basketball. It's a game of undercover rhythm. Finally, he states, it's arcade, and I know it, but to be honest, I still stick with the old games. And my number one is still NBA Street Volume 2. I think it's avoidable to drop €30 on NBA The Run. Maybe I'll buy it when the price drops a lot. Trying it out at a friend's house was enough for me. So he got his hands on the sticks, was not happy with it, didn't think it was close to as good as NBA Street Volume 2. And yeah, I think NBA Street Volume 2 is the greatest street basketball game ever made. Every time I go back and play it, I'm reminded of how good it is. And yeah, this game is not as good as that game, and I don't think it ever will be. I think that game not only had a bigger development team, but it had the right ideas in mind as it relates to the direction with the game. Getting the atmosphere right, getting the depth right, speaking to the average consumer. And I don't think NBA The Run is there.
It's not. And people can say, don't compare different games, whatever. But obviously, as we've said, it is a successor. It's been billed as such, a spiritual successor to NBA Street that invites the comparisons for a start. Also, you want modern games to be better than what came out 20, 25 years ago. Can you imagine a movie coming out, Derek, a blockbuster movie coming out today in 2026, and it has 90s style CGI, 90s level CGI? People would say these special effects are dated. It looks bad. Unless you're deliberately going for that retro style, something kitschy like that, you wouldn't do it. So modern games have to be better than their predecessors. Absolutely.
Moving over to Discord, QB1120 states, $29.99 is just more than I'd like to pay for this game. When it was first announced, I thought there'd be a good chance I'd buy it. But there's just not enough there to justify the price. If they add to it or lower the price, I'd consider it. Maz states, I feel the exact same way from what I've seen, and based on the handful of games that I played during the open beta.
So yeah, once again, the price is a sticking point. It needs to have that quality of gameplay and also quantity of content and modes.
So that's it for the responses on Discord. Do we have any other responses on other social media platforms?
We did have a couple of people weigh in on Facebook. D, another D, Derek, says, literally just purchased an hour ago, getting torched. John says, I'll buy only if Brunson's in it. And I replied to him, good news, he isn't on the launch roster. MJ says, got it on Steam, not good, got a refund immediately. And we've seen people already talking about getting a refund, Derek.
Yeah, I've seen multiple people pick it up, realize that it had no depth, and then refund it. Or they picked it up and the gameplay didn't hit with them. It was too janky. There was something they didn't like about it, so they refunded the game immediately.
Nick says, The steal mechanic needs to be fixed, and a single-player story should have been added. Other than that, it's decent. And I think that's also a prevailing opinion, Derek, that people are enjoying the game when it's at its best, as we have, but there is that need for that offline campaign, a story, a tournament mode that can be played offline. Easier said than done with the AI as it is, but people are definitely missing it.
Yeah, no game is for everybody, but when you have more depth in your game, it can reach more people.
And finally, James says, looked terrible from the announcement. Never had any interest since, but it's continued to look trash since. So definitely not a fan of the game, obviously, not picking it up, not feeling that it is worth the price from what he's seen. And I can understand that. Having played the game, I do have a more positive view, Derek, but I certainly understand not being interested in the game. People who did see that it was PvP only, as we've covered on previous shows, Derek, for a lot of people, that was a deal breaker. As soon as they found out that it was online only, they completely lost interest. And others simply said, no, this doesn't look good enough.
Yeah, and we talked about it on prior episodes. The first couple trailers that they showed for this game, the game didn't show well. Right, the way alley-oops were being thrown, the way shooting was shown, all of that stuff. Most of the comments that I saw related to those trailers were not positive. So if people saw those trailers and were like, yeah, this game isn't going to be good, this game isn't going to be for me, it's very likely that they stuck with that mindset and are not going to pick up the game. And you know what? That's just, in my opinion, overall poor marketing. I don't think that those trailers showed well, and I don't think that it was ready for prime time at the time they showed that footage. I think they should have waited until they fixed up the gameplay a little bit, made it look a little bit better, a little bit smoother, maybe showed some different highlights and whatnot if you didn't want that backlash. So that's on them for losing those consumers.
And it will be interesting to see what happens from here as far as people maintaining their interest, as far as the game changing according to feedback. As far as further gameplay enhancements, content drops, there's no roadmap out there talking about any of that stuff. So yeah, I suppose we'll see what happens in the weeks and months to come. But like I said, I can see a lot of people enjoying the game for now, but then rapidly losing interest because the tournaments feel repetitive, no new content. And yeah, that's great if they've had fun and feel like they got their money's worth. But yeah, I don't know about the long-term health of this game.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to say is, and you've seen it, you've looked in on the NBA The Run Discord, it can get pretty toxic in there sometimes. And I want to let the content creators in there know that there are millions of other gamers that exist outside your Discord that you're in, of around, 3,000, 4,000 people, or however many people are in that Discord. And I know that you want to protect your content and you want to promote your content and you really want to, push this game and push your content and all of that stuff. But, shooting down valid critiques and criticisms and jumping all over people who, may disagree with you and all of that stuff, it's just a lousy way to present yourself and a lousy way to treat people. It's also a lousy way to use your influence. Not all content creators are like that. Not all content creators for NBA The Run are like that. I've seen some pretty awesome ones, to be completely honest with you. But the ones that are doing this and the ones that are shooting down valid critiques and just jumping all over people and being super nasty to people, I can promise you that's not a good look, and it's a terrible way to use your influence.
But thank you to everybody who responded to Derek's community question, sharing their opinions of NBA The Run. Once again, we will see how the game shapes up in the weeks and months to come.
And I hope the game grows. I hope they add content to it. They've talked about adding legends. That's exciting, right? I hope that they add more signature style to it. Maybe they'll add some more current NBA players at some point. Maybe we will get offline play in the future, but these are all maybes, right? This is all potential. This is all, discussion at this point. I need to see stuff put into action. And then maybe that will justify the base price of the game. I do hope that at the end of the day that no microtransactions enter this game. However, I do feel like it's going to be part of the game in the future, and we'll see how that plays out. But fingers crossed that doesn't happen.
We will indeed see. With that being said, that has brought us to the end of this week's show. Thank you for tuning in, and a reminder that you can catch us every week on the NLSC, our YouTube channel, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast platforms. Also, both we and the NLSC are on social media, and would appreciate a follow. So Derek, go ahead and plug the handles.
You can reach me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at D for3G and at D for384. I'm also on the NLSC, D for3, and on YouTube, D for3.
As for me, I'm Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on X and Blue Sky. The NLSC is on X, Facebook, and Blue Sky at the NLSC. We're also NLSC Basketball on Instagram and Threads. We're on YouTube at NBA Live Series Center. And of course, keep it locked to the NLSC itself, nba-live.com, for all things basketball gaming. So, thank you again for tuning in, and until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone!